So, what have we learned? We have learned the first lesson. They will always hate us. We will never live in a world of peace, which is why control and non-violence are essential. We must prove ourselves a peaceful people. We must give the ordinary humans respect, compliance, and understanding. And we must never mistake that for trust.
Emma Frost, as played by John F. Kennedy.
Oh my God. How many of Kennedy's speeches did you watch to get that down?
Actually, it's the full-on Joe Quimby. I'm a diamond, Miss Pride. I am by definition my own best friend.
Oh, jokes. Good morning, Krakoa. Every death's like a revolving door. Every night it makes history. Every book is a mystery. Good morning, Krakoa. And someday when I read all the lore, the council will wake up and see Krakoa and me. Good morning, Krakoa.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You must stand. You must stand.
You have to. Thank you. Good morning, Krakoa. Welcome on in. That's right. It's time to rise and shine. Hi, I'm Michael.
I'm DeVon.
And I'm Terence.
And we are here to talk about this week's X-Books. We've got some great stuff for you folks. Lots of conversation, lots of queer blathering, lots of unapologetic opinions. And all we need is you. We just need you to be a part of the conversation.
Maybe we should say it in unison.
Okay, you ready? Let's do it on three. I'll count to three.
Okay.
And on the one, say good morning, Krakoa.
On the
What?
Okay. So 3, 2, 1.
Oh, you're
counting
down
down
from 3. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
So we're going with surprise. Happy birthday was too wordy, and we couldn't nail it at rehearsal.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Good morning,
Krakoa.
That was fucking
Terrible.
Keep it. Put that in.
Oh my God, awful. Done. So speaking of which, like, if I got totally wasted and just did Emma Frost in a terrible Bostonian accent.
There is your drunk presentation.
Exactly.
Is why Emma Frost shouldn't have a fake British accent, but instead a thick Bostonian.
That would probably not be my drunk X-Men presentation. I don't know. I'd have to think about what mine would be. I don't know what yours would be.
Probably anyone that has regenerative abilities probably isn't circumcised.
I mean,
those, it happened before their abilities manifested.
They still heal.
Yeah, it'd be like killing Moira before she got her abilities.
Then again, these people are being resurrected, and
right.
So
when you're resurrected, do you come back with foreskin?
No.
Is it a choir situation where you make requests?
Yeah.
Or do the 5 have a complete circumcision station set up? Like, is that part of their whole thing?
Well, apparently they have a laboratory where they can give you more adamantiums. I'm sure Beast, as a medical doctor, knows how to perform a circumcision. And Cecilia Reyes.
Elixir could probably do it in a pinch.
I can see Cecilia Reyes.
With
a pinch.
I could see Cecilia Reyes at an operating table with a bunch of like Quentin Quire clones. Like, I am above this. Why am I tolerating this?
They don't even get to do it. Okay, so they're doing it on adults. Like, she's not even doing it to like babies, right? Like, she's performing adult circumcision.
Exactly.
On people.
I'm just imagining her like just having like a casual conversation, and she's like doing stuff with scissors and not even looking, and then you look down and it's like 7 different choirs that she's just like preemptively circumcised.
So what if she eventually has to go back to flat scan society, and on her resume she's going to have to list like adult circumcision as one of her specialties because she's done like 1 million of them on Krakoa.
Or maybe they don't on Krakoa. Maybe they're no circ. Maybe they're like, bodily autonomy.
I mean, snatch my wig, it's fine.
Yeah, snatch my dick wig bald.
Yeah.
Wow,
this podcast is not for kids.
No. What?
Is it ever?
What surprised you there?
Anyway, 100% no circ on Krakoa. It's canon now.
I say they allow you to do whatever you like with your body. If you want to circumcise it, you can.
As an adult.
Cosmar would disagree.
Yeah, Cosmar is like, well, you didn't let me do whatever I want to do with my body.
Not an adult.
Right.
Danny's probably like, excuse me, I don't think you should be circumcising yourself.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think Danny would just say that you should be happy with whomever you are.
You wouldn't let Cosmar alter her
giant bulging amphibian eye.
Right. But you would let Quentin Quire change the size of his dick by request.
Right.
But also keep in mind, Quire dies a lot more than most Krakoans. It makes sense to me as a perk that he would have a little more free reign.
That's kind of not fair because Cosmar would die more frequently if someone wouldn't be a selfish butthole about it.
Oh yeah, someone's selfish for not wanting to murder a child.
No, I think this is the time to have that conversation. Let's go ahead and give some context as to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Okay. So Michael and I have had an issue here with the idea of, as exemplified by Cosmar and Danny Moonstar in one of the issues of New Mutants, where mutants seem to be able to change themselves if they pass away and are subsequently revived on Krakoa. And Cosmar, in her case, is someone who has the ability to shape reality. And because she does not have the ability to control that when they first manifested, changed her body in a way that was not intentional. And she feels a certain way about how her body looks, as do a lot of mutants about the ways that it's changed their forms without their choosing to have done so. And of course, Cosmar wants Danny to help her be revived after the Crucible so she can have the body that she started out with. Now, there might be an argument here about having to accept yourself as beautiful outside of rigid beauty standards. But in this case, this is a very traumatic and sudden change to someone's body image that they did not want. And I think it is totally fair for Cosmar to ask Danny Moonstar to help her, except Danny's response as a mutant who can absolutely pass, which goes back to the argument that the X-Men have laid for a long time with the Morlocks and surface-dwelling mutants who are beautiful, can pass as human, don't have any issues with their powers, that there is a level of privilege. And Danny Moonstar's slamming hot, totally ripped body, right? Like for her to turn to Cosmar and say, well, look, I can't really do this, and you should really just love your body the way it is. Because I might be in a super hot, fit 20-year-old body and look like any other human being and be able to pass in society, but that's just the same as you having a half amphibian, giant, mutated form that you didn't ask for. And you just need to be like, okay with yourself.
What a wonderfully nuanced perspective.
That is exactly what happened.
Okay. Is it my turn?
And I'll remind you, this is the biggest point in my favor. I have never been wrong.
Oh, okay. Well,
and in the other corner,
go ahead and strap in. Okay, so first of all, sir and or madam, the main concern here is that Cosmar, one, is a child. She also is scared and afraid and in a completely new situation and dealing with standard teenage body issues on top of all of these other things. When we look at this from a meta perspective, what kind of message does it send to similarly young readers that if you don't like the way you look, you should just go ahead and kill yourself? And then if you're a mutant, you'll be brought back. Which, by the way, not necessarily, because that goes against lots of things that were talked about in the very famous Crucible issue about living wills and things like that. Beyond that, there's also the fact that there are alternatives that Cosmar simply doesn't know about. We have already seen where Mask has helped a child with the cleft lip. and seem to really enjoy that. That is one avenue. Number two, she is at this school to learn how to control her powers. If her powers are what caused her to lose her regular features and become disfigured, it stands to reason that gaining control over those powers would allow her to one day reconfigure herself to appear however she wanted. So death is not the answer. And death has been repeatedly shown in the Krakoa verse to be extremely traumatic and to change people. And Dani has every right to not want to put herself through the trauma of murdering a little girl that she's been taking care of. That is horrific on multiple scales. No, there are other ways beyond death.
But you're applying regular flat scan concepts of mortality and morality to this scenario, because Dani is not killing a child. She is existing in a system which is made to help improve mutants as they wish. Now, obviously, you could argue that it still isn't something that she wants to do. And that's fine. She doesn't have to kill anyone if she doesn't want to. But she should couch that, if that's the actual reason, in, I don't want to kill somebody. Because Storm said the same thing to Callisto. She said, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to kill you. Of course, she came to her senses and realized that Callisto is living in a situation that is actually quite unbearable for her. And rather than let someone impersonally do it, which actually still isn't that bad, provided it's not Fenris, okay, fuck them, that she actually did it and helped her friend go out with dignity. In this case, I get it. Cosmere is a child. But if Dani does not want to kill a child, that's fine. She should just say so. To couch it in, oh, we're all beautiful. It's fine. It's not an issue of whether or not everyone thinks everyone is beautiful, because right now Cosmere has a very difficult time accepting a very traumatic change to her personhood. This isn't the way she's always been. It's not something she's always lived with. This is a huge challenge for her, and one that can be reversed. Yes, it could be reversed if she eventually learns how to control her powers. That's totally fair. But when will that happen? Will it actually happen? Because Rogue went a very long time not being able to control her powers, and it left her physically isolated and tormented for, in universe, several years, out of universe, decades, right? So there's a really serious issue in terms of quality of life and what dignity is this character allowed to have with regard to their own sense of personhood. Now, frankly, I don't know what's really stopping Cosmere from killing herself, because Siren got brought back like 3,000 times. So I guess Cosmere could just kill herself and then. But even the meta argument that, like, if you don't like the way you look, you should just kill yourself, doesn't really apply here, because this is within the mechanism of death is not seriously death. It is being reborn. So we have to separate, like, the textual reality of death from the metatextual message about death. What this is saying is you have the means to control the way you look and the way you feel. And this system is available to help that happen.
Sure. This just that system has the price tag of permanent trauma for you and those that get to watch you die and kill you. Well, I feel like Way of X is probably going to address this in detail, because this goes back to that argument from that Crucible issue. Is it acceptable? Is it okay to want to change yourself via death and resurrection just over and over and over again because you don't like something about yourself? I mean, by this rationale, sure, bring me back with Magneto's powers and Quicksilver's at the same time. Why not? Because I don't like the way I currently am.
Now, I certainly do think that you could put in certain fail-safes, right? In the same way that you might, in a therapeutic sense, you could determine whether or not this body image change, this very traumatic one that has happened to Cosmere, is something that is actually affecting her mental health. And if it is causing enough of an issue that it could actually be harmful to herself and it can be remedied, then there's no reason not to.
Well, there's also the perspective that the Crucible as a mechanism is designed for victims of House of M.
Who themselves were traumatically changed, would you?
They were traumatically changed because something was stolen from them, not because they don't like the way they look.
But Cosmere had no choice about the way. She has a way that she used to look, and this thing, whether or not it originated in her, has stolen her appearance, right? And radically changed her into another form. Now, obviously, other mutants who have experienced things like this, like Mercury, who suddenly just one day went from a red-haired cheerleader girl to an entire puddle of living Mercury. Like, Yeah, you could argue the same thing, but maybe Mercury has come to love herself as she is. But I think that there should be some space here for mutants who have experienced very drastic physiological changes that are even beyond the scope of what they themselves can accept to be able to change that. And I think there's just something inherently privileged about mutants who can pass as human, who meet flat scan beauty standards, saying, oh, well, we don't need to worry about flat scan beauty standards here. I just happen to totally exhibit everything about flat scan beauty standards, and you don't, but we're the same. We should love each other.
Look, you speak as if Danny's mutant power is what gave her abs. No, that was years of training, years of time in the gym and the danger room.
Or was it? Would she have always looked this way? Because it certainly isn't her mutant powers changing her physiology. That's the thing. She doesn't have a mutant power that has radically altered her from passing within a privileged society.
Except for the whole psychic trauma thing.
Yeah, but the psychic trauma is not like visible on her person.
Oh, yes. Like, so invisible traumas aren't as important as physical traumas.
Callisto's point when she was referring to Storm and the other X-Men is that regardless of whether or not they have personal trauma about being able to fabulously control the weather and fabulously invade other people's minds and make them do whatever they want, is that they can still afford to exist in a society that would, if they were detectable as mutants in any other way, any other physiological way, target and hunt and destroy them. So Cosmere does not have the privilege of being able to walk out into flat scan society and survive if she needed to, compared to Danny, who essentially just looks like a regular flat scan and could pass if she wanted. Passing privilege is real.
I don't disagree that passing privilege is real. You are correct there. Nightcrawler has experienced that and is kind of the poster child for it. But at the same time, Nightcrawler also has been the poster child for self-acceptance and self-love despite their appearance and actually reveling in their devilish figure.
But also he was born that way.
I think one of the largest, the most telling examples of passing privilege is going to come when Beast is resurrected, and whether or not he's in his blue furry form or if he is human again.
But the reality is that, like, shortcuts, if you have the ability to provide shortcuts that don't have to require adversity and trauma and difficulty and hoop jumping in order to get, you should apply them. People deserve to have the things they want if the technology is there that allows them to do it. They shouldn't have to suffer in order to get it.
I don't think that it's about suffering. Suffering is not the point. The point is that it is death. Whether it is a new mechanism of death is kind of irrelevant because they have to kill themselves. Death still has meaning even if it isn't permanent. If we've learned anything about comics, that should be the case. Every time a character dies, even if we know damn well they're coming back, their death still has reverberations on the people that love them.
Wasn't there an entire 3-page spread of Quentin Quire dying in multiple graphic ways that had zero emotional impact? In fact, it was comical.
And did you, Michael, or did you not, in front of this entire jury here, did you not revel in the multiple deaths of Quentin Quire?
I did, but there was someone affected beyond Quentin Quire.
Who?
I can't remember her name. Phoebe, Sophie, whoever the hell.
Sophie. Actually, it was Sophie.
I don't know. I literally I don't use their names.
She cares about Quire, and she doesn't want him to die. His many, 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 many deaths are still having an impact on the people that care about him. It's just in Quire's case, because he is the ultimate douchebag, that's about some total of one person, but it still affects the people that love you.
Fine.
I mean, I get it. Your point still stands, but is mitigated by the specifics of the situation.
Which is that people can be brought back. It's not finality. It is the good death that is one of someone's choosing, and not a bad death that is not of their choosing, and that is permanent and traumatic and horrible. In this case, it is a gateway specifically and contextually only within this mechanism of rebirth that can happen, that it makes it not the same as traumatic deaths that have happened in the past in comics.
And I say that the trauma of death is not relegated just to the person who dies, because we've seen multiple times they don't even remember their deaths. But the trauma of death is more so the ripple effect of those that care about them, those that witnessed it or even dealt it.
Yeah, but it's like right to die. Other people can be sad if someone dies, but if they know it is specifically to facilitate someone being brought back in a way that is healthier and better for their mental health, or better even for their physical health, if you include like the ability to control one's powers as a physical health issue, then it doesn't have the same trauma that bad deaths or deaths that we've understood them in the flat scan world, or even in the beautiful, fantastic, superior mutant world, have happened.
I think even in this conversation, we're still looking at death through a very flat scan lens. Death has been conquered here. It doesn't have the same meaning anymore. That is the entire point. I know that you still might think it has the same meaning, but when it's become a bureaucratic process as opposed to a finality, then it's really not much different than dialysis.
And I do think there is a difference between kinds of death, even within this system. The original team of X-Men in Hoxpox go on this mission to stop this mother mold sentinel and all die very heroically and in some cases quite terribly for the mission. And that kind of death has different weight compared to the deaths that happen as a result of the crucible, because they are consensual decisions that are made about right to death in order to facilitate their coming back, with the understanding that it is not final, that it is part of a systematic solution to help them and fix them in a way that they want to be fixed.
We don't have any examples of mutant abilities being tweaked to the point of optimization.
If anything, we've actually seen mutant powers expanding. Remember, they just recently said that it seems like after every resurrection, you're getting more and more powerful.
Even Peter, whose powers we didn't know were problematic, it sets a precedent for problematic mutant powers not being tweaked to the point of being controllable, but still having to find third-party solutions.
That's true. So I will say that maybe the issue here is that the mechanism of using the resurrection process in order to fix the traumatic errors that emerging mutant powers may have caused on their user is perhaps not the right venue or the right method for that solution, which maintains that because I changed my opinion that I'm still correct.
So we have this week
X-Men number 19, X-Men Legends number 2,
and King in Black, Return of the Valkyries number 4. I said number 5 last week. It's actually number 4.
Retcon. Okay, well, this shouldn't be too hard, Michael. Are you ready to give your 30-second summary?
Who
doing
are
it live. We're doing it live.
No, I'm not ready.
Quick rundown. You have Jane, Brunhilde, Other Valkyrie,
Other Valkyrie,
Other Club, Other Club,
Other Club,
Other Club,
Next Club, Next Club, Strip Club, Rehearsal,
Valkyrie, Other Valkyrie, Old Valkyrie, Blonde Valkyrie,
A Winged Horse,
Talking Winged Horse.
Mm-hmm.
So, whenever you are ready, in 3, 2, 1, go.
So they're still doing the needle thing with Jane and Danny, trying to sever the connection between Noel and the Celestial's head. And they do that for a while. And then Jane gets sucked into this weird afterlife thing where the Celestial's like, hey, here's your dead kid. And then she's like, nah, that's not really my dead kid because of reasons. And then eventually they're able to sever the connection to Noel. And then all the other Valkyries come back from the dead to also join in on the fight. And then they defeat the Celestial and he says, okay, bye. And then Noel has lost the power and that's it. He doesn't even know he's lost it.
And you didn't make it. Boo!
Go ahead and give me my lashings, Daddy.
Beat him to the Kraken.
The rule here is that if you don't make it to 30 seconds, we get to shame that person and shame them greatly.
I have nothing to shame me for. I'm not used to shaming people. I'm a nice person.
DeVon's just disappointed.
Well, that's
I'm
worse.
not angry. I'm just disappointed.
That's worse.
Okay, so that is the summary of King in Black, Return of the Valkyries.
Yeah, it was just a setup for The Mighty Valkyries, which is a book that is coming soon. Danny was barely in it. Like, she was there, but she was more just like a supporting character, had no arc of her own. It was just like, oh yeah, this is a living character that was a Valkyrie once upon a time. So we'll MacGuffin a reason for her to have her Valkyrie powers again. But once this is over, she won't have her powers again. And they don't even show us that she has lost her powers. It's just assumed when she returns to the real world, she won't have her powers. Thank you, Danny, for being the woman of color that keeps all the white women from failing.
Except for that other Valkyrie, whatever her name is.
She still actually doesn't have a name. They say in the promotionals that that's going to be one of the big mysteries of the book, is that we don't even know her name.
But I'll bet she's related to Gateway.
Oh my god.
Damn.
Yeah, I also read this and there really wasn't much of Danny. This is what I hate. The book literally says that there are no consequences to this 4-issue miniseries. Nothing happens in it that is relevant to the actual tie-in. They're like, Null doesn't even know that he's connected to this power, but we gotta sever it. So there's no consequences, no impact, and it will never be referenced in the main series.
He has been weakened, but he doesn't know that he's been weakened. But he's definitely not as strong as he once was. Now, we totally are relevant.
What happens if we lose?
Nothing. There's nothing at stake and no threat beyond the shame of defeat.
It was really just 4 issues that introduced, admittedly, a cool character, the unnamed Valkyrie. And so that's all, really compelling stuff. So she is an interesting character. I do like her. She's obviously inspired by the MCU Valkyrie to a degree. Like Jane Foster was cool, I guess. It had a lot of great stuff for Jane Foster to do, but I was just so put off by the fact that you lured me in with Danny being a lead character in the book. And I was like, oh, all right, going back, talking about her roots in Asgard, work. And then she's just in the background and she's literally just holding the rope. And then Danny is going to get pushed out of the book, I'm sure, because she doesn't have her Valkyrie powers in the regular world. So
better for it.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't need to associate with those people, but still.
Okay, well, then I will handle X-Men Legends.
Oh, I'm excited for this one. Okay, let's see. You are ready in 3, 2, 1, go.
So the X-Men, including Adam X, meet up with Corsair, who reveals that Adam X is in fact a relative to the brothers, the Summers brothers, and promptly shoots him in the head, but he comes back to life. And then they basically describe what his past was. The Shi'ar Imperium comes to fight him. He gains his freedom by pleading to Lilandra, and then takes on the last name Adam X Namani, and Oracle wipes all their memories about who he actually is, and he goes and works on a farm.
Wrong. 5 seconds over. Boo. Shame. Where's my bell? Where is my bell?
So what did actually happen in this book? So yeah, Corsair basically reveals that Adam X is in fact a relative to the Summers brothers, and that he is in some sense the third Summers brother. This is taking place before Vulcan is revealed. He is a half-brother from their mother's side, who is the genetic offspring of the Shi'ar Emperor, who kidnapped her and turned her into a slave. Canonically, how he fits is that he was raised within a Shi'ar tube or whatever for children, and was subsequently rescued by someone. The other Summers brothers seem to accept him pretty quickly. Corsair shot him in the head in order to turn him in for a bounty, but it turns out that, I guess we learned canonically, that Adam X's brain is in his butt cheek.
Yes.
So then he is deemed so troublesome, because I guess he threatens the Empire, that the Shi'ar Imperial Guard comes to arrest him. But he ends up pleading his case to Lilandra, who for some reason decides that he's not a threat and grants him autonomy. Because he is so dangerous to the Empire and people would come after him and endanger other people, such as the Summers grandparents, Oracle, the government worker of psychics in the Shi'ar Empire, erases all of their memories, and Adam X takes on the last name Namani and ends up on the farm where presumably he was found in other stories. And meanwhile, the only person who seems to be watching all of this is Mr. Sinister. But the coolest thing that we did get here in this story, one of the big questions about Marvel for a long time in the X-Men continuity was, who is the third Summers brother? And they lay out a full genealogy showing who are the members of the Summers clan. And so that shows you everything, including the grandparents, the Greys, down to Marvel Girl and Cyclops, all of their various partners that have existed, and all of their future children. So what we have here is that Vulcan is listed, obviously, as the third Summers brother, but Adam X, or Extreme, is their half-brother by way of Catherine Summers. And we even see Ruby Summers here with the future daughter from Emma Frost. What's cool about this book is that I think the approach here is to look at all the past continuity because of how Hoxpox is consolidating continuity together. It seems like they've decided to also go back and fill in the cracks of what's been going on in the past and answer those questions. So right now we've just answered the question of where's that loose end with Adam X and Vulcan and whoever was supposed to be the third or fourth or fifth or however many Summers brothers were hinted at. And maybe in the next issues, we'll also see more questions answered with the X-Men continuity.
Well, as we know in the present, Adam X has opened an OnlyFans on Mojoverse, so things are clearly not going the way he expected. What I don't like about this, and there's quite a bit actually, Adam X, his entire ability is to ignite people's exposed blood. And he does this by getting close enough to actual arteries. If you were close enough to draw blood, why not just, go all the way?
Just stab a bitch.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in most cases, he does. I think we see in one panel where he's got Eric the Red. He's up to his ribs with these claws that he's stolen from, I guess, one of those bird people who follow Eric the Red in his death cult.
Look, I sat back after reading X-Men Legends #2. I shared this with you guys already. My immediate reaction was, hated it. Just 100% over it. Didn't like it. I was excited when I heard about the Legends title and what its purpose was going to be. I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I love what you're doing. Great for continuity horrors like myself. But the problem is you started with Adam X, who is just the poster child for everything wrong with the 90s. Oh, right. I have this tragic backstory. Nobody knows the power that I wield. I am so strong with my long blonde hair and my name that is Adam X. And actually, I'm a hybrid between a human and this alien race. But also, I am made from the egg of the mom who's dead now of a very famous family within the mutant and Marvel universe. Also, I have these really sick knives that are shaped like feathers, and I can throw them. This is a 13-year-old's D&D character.
This is a Marley Sue, right? Because he really does have all those characteristics, right? He's everything that's supposed to be cool about the X-Men. Even these little claws he has are basically like Wolverine knockoffs. But I have to say, I did love how limber a lot of these male figures looked. Like Cyclops, when he goes in for this hug with Adam X, is looking very, very flexible. And Eric the Red too, when he's getting all of his blood lit on fire. So that's kind of some nice eye candy there. But
like, I really do think that the creative team knew this going in. Like, they knew Adam X was gonna be bad. When all the ingredients in the recipe are trash, you're going to have a trash meal. I get it. They didn't have much to work with, but I still hated it.
I mean, do you think that it seems so unaware because it's actually aware, like it's intentionally trying to recreate the craziness of the 90s?
Honestly, yeah.
They're really just trying to capitalize on the nostalgia here without realizing that, yeah, a lot of it was trash and it's just not salvageable.
That no one actually feels nostalgia for the 90s period of the X-Men.
Minus X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue.
Yes, minus Blue and Gold.
Not this corner.
Because I kept thinking here, like, who does the character of Adam X Extreme really speak to nowadays? Nobody, right? So...
Actually, it's funny you say that, because the entire time that I was reading the book, I was hearing your voice in my head saying things like, this just goes to show that these kinds of books aren't written for me. aren't meant for me. Like that's what was in my head the entire. I was like, I'm not this book's audience. I don't know who is, honestly, because I hated it. But I had no empathy for this book whatsoever.
You thought I would say that even after you saw this panel of Scott giving a full like leg bend stretch to hug Adam X?
Listen, I love a good thick thigh as much as the next boy, but that's not enough to get through this 90s monstrosity.
I'm just impressed that he was able to pop this impromptu hug without impaling himself on these bladed shoulder pauldrons.
Right? DeVon, I love this thing that you said outside of our podcast where you were like, are we supposed to believe that Oracle of all telepaths is the one who hid all these memories from Jean and Emma?
For real. As we've said before, Oracle is the government psychic. Like, she's not on the same level as Jean and Emma. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that she was able to hide this from Jean and Emma, but Jean and Emma looked at this and recognized it for the trash that it was and figured that everyone else was best off not knowing.
You know what? There's actually precedent for that. Because Jean read Corsair's mind at one point back in the Phoenix Saga, realized that he was actually Scott's father, and was like, oh, Scott, I just don't think you'll be able to handle it. So it is totally within canon for Jean to be like, nah, we're just not going to bring that up.
Right?
It's just so sad. I mean, when you think about how Oracle has just been so outgunned by Phoenix and other telepaths, even the Stepford Cuckoos took Oracle out. Like,
and the announcement that she is the strongest telepath in the entire Imperium, like, what are they doing on Earth that like every fifth telepath is stronger than Oracle?
Oracle's probably actually like the accountant for this department, but then the lead telepath, quit and found a better job somewhere else. So she just had to take up the role with her limited psychic abilities. Poor Oracle.
Not to mention, actually, now that I think about it, wasn't there a recent X-Men issue where Jean comes to the Shi'ar with Storm and Cyclops, and they're trying to find the secret assassin trader, and Oracle's like, oh, don't worry, I've already scanned their minds. And Jean is like, let me show you how to actually do it.
Right? He's like, not to like shade you or anything, and this isn't a read, but I'm just going to, take a look just in case, maybe you missed something.
Just to see, a second pair of eyes.
Right.
And she found them. Didn't she find who the traitor
She found the traitor.
So, girl, Oracle, this isn't a read, but I could do your job better.
There are better psychics. I'm sorry, baby.
Maybe you should just take like a professional development course.
100%.
So, DeVon, do you want to handle our third issue?
Sure.
Are you ready, sir, for that 30-second?
Ooh, I will. I'll do my best at picking out points that I was not prepared to do this, but let's go.
Are you prepared to be shamed?
No.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with shaming DeVon. Like, he's obviously my favorite, so I don't want to shame him.
You can't shame the shameless, Michael.
Mutant, you stand here at the Crucible. Do you understand what awaits you if you fail?
I am ready. Let's go.
We see you, mutant. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, X-Men number 19, we are finally catching up to Darwin Sink and Laura Kinney's Wolverine on their 3-hour tour of the Vault. Last time we saw them, they were busy being completely disintegrated by a blast from the Child of the Vault known as Aguja, and now we've picked up with them and their uniforms regenerating from almost nothing. The rest of this issue is just a mix of expository narration and expository text blocks that illuminate the artist's complete misunderstanding of how infographics work. We start off by seeing Darwin get the team through a number of situations by being able to evolve everything but an interesting personality. And finally, Sink, we learned that his abilities have evolved to the point of him being able to mimic the powers of only partial people that he's carrying around in a bag. Creepy as fuck. Laura and Sink develop a relationship. They figure out that they cannot escape the vault, and when they finally are able to get past this shield that robs them of their powers, Laura is killed in a blazing self-sacrifice. Sync reaches the save crystal and is able to back himself up in time to tell us all of this in a complete illustrated debrief.
Well, it
I went
wasn't
over
30
the
seconds.
Yeah, I thought not. I didn't think so.
We can't shame you, DeVon. You're our precious baby.
I can't because
Oh.
you made good jokes while you were doing it.
3-hour tour. Come on, yeah.
Come on, the save crystal, get out of
The
here.
Save crystal, brilliant. Oh my god. Which, quick question. You know, mostly mutants don't remember when they get revived because they've been killed in the interim week. But there's got to be someone who got killed right after they hit the save point.
Mhm.
I think this is it. This is our one example of that happening.
Exactly.
I just have to say that when I read this issue, I was at work. I put down my digital reader and I stood up and I walked around and I audibly was just like, girl. And my coworkers were looking at me like, what are you doing? And I was like, you wouldn't understand. I had such a reaction to the end of this book.
I don't understand that reaction because I was nothing but disappointed. I wanted so much more from this book. I think that maybe in the future we can revisit this as a very compelling miniseries if it's expanded out and we actually get the story of what happened. But this was just a debrief. This was a debrief with pictures. It was a PowerPoint of what happened in the vault. It's interspersed, of course, with these text dumps that are even worse here because they tell you what is about to happen, and then we see it play out. And then we get another one that tells you again what's going to happen, and it spoils the rest of the story. It ruins the entire experience of finding out what happened in the vault by telling you what happens, play for play. And I get it. This is a 300-year story condensed down into one issue. There's no time. But one day, I hope we can revisit this and do it the justice it deserves, because this was an outline of a compelling story that just didn't have the time to develop.
I think the surprise here is that you have this relationship form between Everett and Laura.
Okay, so first of all, when you throw heteros into a situation where they're isolated and forever,
We can't
there's
help
going
it.
to be a love story.
That's true.
Mhm. No offense to straights that may be listening. We love you. Thank you for being allies, but you know it's true.
I mean, it was interesting to revisit the children of the vault. I don't think I ever really predicted outside of Mike Carey's initial run with them that they would be these recurring threats, and one that I guess is posited as actually quite toe-to-toe of a danger to the new order of X-Men.
I had never really considered the fact that they were the same kids multiple generations. I saw an interesting parallel between what's happening in Krakoa and what's happening inside the vault. You've got like the same 6 kids that are being essentially resurrected through these multiple generations, but each time getting stronger, you know? So it's almost like smaller in scale, but still comparable to what's happening with Krakoa right now. The ultimate ramification of X of Swords was that we got Araco. We got this whole nother island full of mutants. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell are we going to get through this Children of the Vault situation? Are we going to kill them all? That doesn't seem right. That seems too final. When we consider that in this issue, Darwin was captured and was experimented and atomized multiple times, like several thousand times, to eventually, I guess, learn evolution from him. How was that any different from being a mutant?
Yeah, it seemed like, if I understood it correctly, that they were going to integrate Darwin's mutancy into their design for the children, which at that point, yeah, what is the difference? You've essentially just become mutants. And is that just going to line up with mutant domination that's supposed to happen over time anyway?
Which goes back to the third rule of Krakoa: make more mutants. What if we've got Krakoa as a state, and we've got Araco as a state, and then we get the Vault as another state. 3 different kinds of mutants, and they're all a part of the larger nation.
How do we feel about this love story and the reality that Everett's the only one who's been backed up and so remembers his whole love connection with Laura, but Laura presumably does not?
This is the ending of every gay love story that I have ever seen, read, or heard about.
So when I first read it, I was like, that's pretty cool. I was like, maybe this will be his emphasis for pursuing her. But I was listening to the comments from Blurred Without Fear on YouTube. Excellent YouTube channels. And he brought up a incredible point that I hadn't considered, which was that it is almost identical to what happened to our favorite former acolyte, Joanna, where we have a Black person that is an alternate reality falling in love with the white person. And then when they escape from that reality, the Black person has to shoulder the trauma of remembering the incredible relationship that they had, but the white person has no memory of it.
That's true.
Frenzy and Sync are going to join the same support group. I used to love a white person.
Mm-hmm.
And now they pretend I don't exist. I do not want a Sync story to be him trying to win over Laura again. I do not want to read that. I want this mini-series expanding on the relationship that they did have, because I want to actually be invested in it. It's really hard to be invested in their relationship or their loss. Like I said, this had all the emotional weight of a debrief.
Personally, I want another polycule. I want it to not just be Sync and Laura, but also Darwin.
I mean, you don't think that Darwin evolved some very interesting genitalia in those 300 years with just these other 2 people?
I mean, they did actually say Darwin evolved to live in isolation. That was part of the info block. So you can, let your imagination run wild there. Dick fingers.
Yes.
Dick fingers.
Dick fingers are canon.
Do we think that they might expand on this? Because the X-Men title has been working just on vignettes, but they've really laid out a lot of plot points in these infographics, right? They're talking about a falling out that occurred between them,
right?
Years of isolation. And I feel like that's almost like leaving fodder out there for someone to pick up and do more with.
Maybe they're setting the ground for another X-Men Legends 20 years from now.
Yeah, I would love a mini series that details their time in the vault.
Did I not say this? Was this not?
You didn't say the words mini series.
Oh, I absolutely said mini series. Let's rewind. Rewind the tape. I want this mini series.
I feel like, and I'd hate it because it'd feel like a cash grab, but I feel like Krakoa, with all these mutants that you've brought back, is really ripe for a vignette series, kind of like the old X-Men Unlimited vignette series that came out that was just single issue stories about different characters that have been going on. And here with Krakoa, especially with things like Whatever Happened in the Vault, or any of these characters that you haven't really seen yet that they can't work into the larger plot line, it'd be great to see something written about them or some kind of follow-up to what they're doing.
I agree.
And I'm going to blame all of 2020 for the fact that we don't have this. Staff cutbacks, budget crunches, time crunches are all the reason that I'm telling myself that we don't have these. I can see lots of solo series coming out of this, focusing on Krakoan age mutants. And not just another Wolverine series. We don't need another one. Kate Pride, maybe a very short mini series on Christian Frost, kind of explaining why he's here.
After years of canonically being in a mental institution and then being broken out.
Let's figure out that journey.
Well, they show it, which was a little
We know
weird.
some of it, yeah.
Yeah, because that's how they introduced that Christian has powers.
But where's he been since? Just kind of hanging out in Emma's penthouse?
Yeah, well, I mean, in Iceman, he was doing things, and then he's appeared in Marauders in the submarine.
Yeah, and he's been dating around, I guess, Shinobi Shaw, Iceman. I remember being a young gay kid and reading the Emma Frost solo title that introduced Christian as a more identifiable character. He was introduced to New X-Men kind of as this foppish druggie who went crazy from his drug use, but in the Emma solo series was explained as being someone who eventually used substances to deal with a lot of emotional trauma from their father and was subsequently betrayed and institutionalized. So
Poppers will do it.
yeah, and having having I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. But having him actually come back, albeit in a weird way, that his dad is using his powers to benefit him in some way. At least he's back, right? He's back and finally able to be out, because when that happened with Christian, they kind of just left it that way in the solo series. And I was really devastated because it's another example of tragic endings for gay characters. I could never understand why Emma, once she came to power, couldn't just, especially for the emotional connection she had with Christian, couldn't get him out of there.
It didn't make sense to me. They kind of tried to explain it away in the Iceman book, but I remember that I read it and was like, okay, girl.
She did have a lot going on.
I guess she describes it as she knows what she did was selfish and she just didn't ever go back. And now she does want to. And I guess when she tried, Winston Frost blew her away with the powers he does not actually have. I guess that's as good of an explanation as we're going to get.
So with all that said, I think it's about time that we talk about who are our tops and who are our bottoms of the week.
Once again, DeVon has illuminated some issues with a book that I was otherwise pretty cool with, that there isn't really a lot that's being covered in terms of depth with X-Men. But I would say that my top here has to be X-Men, just because it really does deal with moving the central plot line of Hoxpox and Reign of X, Dawn of X forward. And I think that's really valuable. You know, we've been reading a lot of side titles recently and side adventures, and this is getting us back to that core, especially picking up a thread that was left open for quite a long time in publication history for this event. So being able to see that, of course, being able to see a character like Everett, who hasn't really had the spotlight for many, 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 many publication years, is nice, even if it is very abbreviated here. So I think I'll give it my top spot just for that. My bottom, I think we may have to work with the rule that flat scan books shouldn't be counted because they'll automatically be in the bottom. And indeed, King in Black, Return of the Valkyries would be in my bottom if I was counting it. But then that obviously means that X-Men Legends is at the bottom. The goal of X-Men Legends to address past continuity questions and loose ends is a good one. I think it is good to resolve the issue of Adam X once and for all and see if maybe they can build him into a better character in the future. And I do really value a good genealogy chart.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. My top this week is X-Men number 19. Not necessarily because of its content, but because of its potential down the line for miniseries. And it actually does propel the storyline of the Reign of X forward. Not in a way that was, in my opinion, entirely satisfying, but definitely more so than the other two books. My bottom is definitely going to have to be X-Men Legends because Adam X. And I mean, this entire story could have been one of those info blocks, and I would have been okay with that. Actually, no, I wouldn't have been, because it would have been an info block, but but it really had no impact and could have really just been a chart somewhere where, oh, this is that. And then we could have read all of this on Screen Crush or comics.com.
But I would have been pissed off if they had done that. That would have been a rare time when I didn't like an info block, because I would have been like, what the fuck? Show the story.
And
Show,
then they would
don't
have
tell.
given you X-Men Legends too, and you would be just as disappointed as you are now.
It's true, because this is a catch-22. Whether they show me or don't show me, I'm still going to hate it.
Because Adam X.
Because Adam X. And that is a great segue for my turn. So obviously, my bottom is definitely X-Men Legends 2. Like, even if Return of the Valkyries wasn't even on the table, if we weren't just like, it's a flat scan book, goodbye, it would still be above X-Men Legends 2 because I hated it that much because Adam X and everything that he is and everything that he stands for. And in comparison, X-Men was just so freaking good. Look, I know you didn't agree, you didn't like it, but the story for me really hit in a lot of good places. And unlike you, I enjoy a good data page. So, you know, we were never going to be on the same level there looking at it. But I do like to see that for once, we are all in unanimous agreement on tops and bottoms this week.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we have made it canon that you enjoy Cliff's Notes as just as much as you would a regular novel.
That's actually true.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. You actually admit it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what do we have coming up next week?
So it looks like Marauders number 19, King in Black number 5, and Excalibur number 20.
All right.
So, question, do we actually want to talk about King in Black anymore?
I vote no.
Personally, no. I'm going to
Yeah.
say one chop.
Two chops.
Yeah, the eyes have it. I'd rather not. I'll probably read it, but unless something really awesome for our Merry Mutants happens, I say we focus just on Marauders and Excalibur next week. So King of Black number 5 is the end of the King of Black story.
Thank God.
Thank
I
God.
know.
Also, okay, I hate this, but I just saw this while I was scrolling through the solicitations. In Avengers number 44,
Oh no.
as the greatest heroes and villains of the Marvel Universe are trapped within a battle to decide the all-new Phoenix, a bloody battle that has narrowed to a handful of desperate combatants, Thor leads the rest of the Avengers in a fight to contain the Phoenix Force on Earth in a quest complicated by the Thunder God's own mysterious connection to the cosmic Firebird.
Well, you know that Thor is actually her son now, right?
What? No, stop. I don't even hear.
You didn't know?
Thor is the
No.
son of the Phoenix?
Yes. That was in the most recent issue of Avengers. He
Oh,
like
God.
confronts the Phoenix Force or whatever, and she's like, actually, you're my son. And like it hasn't been resolved, but it's supposed to be resolved in a future issue, which I assume is this one.
God, are we supposed to like read this shit now? Can the
I
Avenger-
mean-
can Flatskins like not touch the Phoenix Force?
Right?
Seriously.
You
Like-
don't understand it, you don't respect it.
Like exactly. I don't need the Phoenix to be touched by anyone who isn't a mutant because I don't know what they're doing with it.
Not just that, they have a cave woman as the first ever Phoenix
not.
host who looks
Let's
just like
not.
Jean.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got that they would do something stupid like that when Avengers versus X-Men had the last Phoenix martial artist host have red hair in the middle of China. I mean, like,
I bet you money, because the whole thing about this current Avengers arc is that they're trying to figure out who's going to be the new host of the Phoenix. I bet you it's going to be Cave Woman Phoenix.
How?
is she alive?
Well, they're going to bring her back somehow because Phoenix. I'm telling you, that's what it'll be. It's they're going to not give it to any of the Avengers, and it's going to be they're going to bring back Cave Woman Phoenix, who looks just like Jean, but isn't Jean. She's the Phoenix, like the Phoenix made corporeal, basically.
God.
And this way it'll essentially be bringing back the Phoenix that like did all the Dark Phoenix stuff because she looked just like Jean, but now she'll be made an Avenger and she won't be a mutant at all. She's a cosmic entity that just looks like a mutant.
Okay, this is ridiculous because first of all, the origins of the Phoenix were to essentially create a cosmically empowered character on the scale of Thor, what Thor was for the Avengers, for the X-Men. If they ended up creating, this is why I don't want the Avengers to deal with the Phoenix, because the Phoenix is not supposed to be something they need in their roster ever, because Thor is that character for them. Not to mention that they have Sentry, right? God knows however many cosmically empowered characters.
Sentry's dead now.
Yeah, I mean, he's dead now.
But
But the point is, like, they have these characters in their roster. the Phoenix is entirely a mutant thing, an X-Men thing, because it allows them to engage with and deal with issues on a cosmic level in a way that is unique for the X-Men. In the same way that the X-Men don't ever really have to, nor should they ever deal with Galactus and the Silver Surfer, right? That is a Fantastic Four sort of thing. Avengers, stop touching the fucking Phoenix. Like, what are you doing here?
You know what this is? This is the X-Men got their own cool thing, which was the Phoenix, and the Avengers were like, hey, I want that.
It's culture vulture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Flat scans are culture vulturing our fabulous mutant lifestyle.
But this is not the first time. Marvel has been repeatedly just abusing the Phoenix. This is why we have the catchphrase, the Phoenix don't love herself.
At the end of
anyone-
all of this, the Phoenix is going to take the form of Lil Nas X. And he's like, I'm just fucking with y'all. I love Earth. Y'all are some messy bitches.
No, that I would
Go
live
back.
for.
Did you did any of you remember when Charles Xavier became Bald Phoenix?
What?
Charles Xavier was a host to the Phoenix at one point in one storyline.
In this reality, 616,
yes, and he was called Bald Phoenix.
Bald
No.
Phoenix.
Bald Phoenix. Like bald eagle, but bald Phoenix.
Oh my god, he looks awful.
As you would expect. So Google corrected me to Bald Phoenix right, and now I've got these really awkward. Actually, this is pretty good look for Phoenix Wright.
Oh, damn it. It did it to me too. Actually, yeah, he looks
That's
more like
hilarious.
Xavier.
Okay.
But
In one often overlooked X-Men story, Charles Xavier briefly wielded some of the Phoenix's power in X-Men Spotlight on Starjammers #2 by Terry
Wow.
Kavanagh and Dave Cockrum.
Oh, I hate this.
Professor X and Lilandra of the Shi'ar Empire had become members of the Starjammers when the team discovered the existence of the Falcon. It turns out the Falcon is in actuality the Phoenix Force. The Starjammers meet with the members of the rebellion and unveil, quote, the Bald Phoenix, who harnesses the portion of the Phoenix Force that was taken from Rachel. The X-Men leader acknowledges that the power is temporary, but nevertheless fights along the rebels to destroy and overthrow Deathbird.
So I took a screenshot of our faces while you were reading that.
Oh my god.
So that's
Y'all
our
are-
faces.
Y'all
While
are fucking pissed. I love this.
look, I made the transition. I did the sacrifice, the hard work of going into flat scan territory and reading all those King in Black books. And I just want to say it wasn't fun. I want to be able to let our listeners, all 8 of them, know that, yeah, this is what's happening in these other books. But at the same time, it's like, are we going to have to read the Phoenix and the Avengers now? Like, I don't wish that on anybody.
You know, and I know that there are great books being written in non-X-Men, non-mutant territory. You know, there are great authors out there, but I'll pick up a copy of something else in Marvel and read it and feel like whatever's been happening with Hickman has moved forward so much in terms of what I want to read from Marvel Comics. Reading King in Black feels like
A regression?
yeah, exactly. Taking several steps back to the era of comics that I'm tired of. I'm tired of meaningless side miniseries or the concept of very outdated ideas about cool. It feels regressive. And I am really thankful that the content that's in the Hickman era right now for X-Men feels very forward and fresh and modern.
With that said, DeVon has been very quick to point out a lot of the failings in the Hickman era. So, like,
Exactly.
I don't want to create this position of, like, you know, Hickman and his ilk can do no wrong.
Yeah,
X blocks.
and I remember and I remember when we first started reading the Hickman era and we were talking when we were meeting up before we did this podcast. Michael, I remember you mentioning that there were a lot of concerns with the Hickman era about how women were featured in books, whether they were part of decision making. So there has been discussion that, of course, the Hickman era is not perfect. There are still issues with how characters are being treated, as DeVon has pointed out, especially with Psylocke. Under his oversight, of course, with other authors writing, you have these somewhat problematic treatments of people of color, of women of color. So
I value a good story. I think Jonathan Hickman is really walking the line. He's really reinvigorated the X-Men franchise to an amazing extent. It's not perfect, but it is compelling. Unfortunately, he's working in a medium that is endangered. Comics are not as profitable as they were 30, 40 years ago because, well, we have the internet, we have streaming services, we have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is, I think, the largest competitor for Marvel Comics, greater than the DC Universe, which we don't ever talk about. But they need these cash grabs, crossover events like King in Black. It's just there to keep the lights on. It's a necessary evil. We have to recognize that we do need to be supporting these people if we want to continue to have good stories. What they've let Jonathan Hickman do is bold, it's novel, it's paying off. But there are very serious financial risks involved in doing that.
So I remember back in the day when we got the previews for Hawks and Pox, like those first issues, I was coming off of Uncanny X-Men and Age of X-Men, where, like I was just completely done with the story. I was so over it. Uncanny X-Men, they were like killing some of my favorite characters off panel. I was honestly getting to the point where I was ready to quit reading again. And so when I saw the solicitations, I remember it so clearly because it was wordless panels and you saw like Storm on the Moon and then you saw Nightcrawler somewhere else and they're all like planting flowers. And we're like, what are the flowers about? And when I read it, I was so freaking jaded. I was just like, oh, good. We're going to have a story about flowers. Wonderful. The bad stories had made me so done with X-Men by that point that I was very, very skeptical of what Hickman was going to do. And I think, honestly, that skepticism is what allowed me to enjoy Hawks and Pox so much, because the bar was on the floor. And then Hickman just freaking knocked it out of the park with those issues. It's all we could talk about. We met at parties, the three of us, in the prenatal development forum of this podcast. That's all we could talk about.
No, I remember. I felt the exact same way because I was already pretty soured on how Avengers versus X-Men, Inhumans versus X-Men, how all of those things ended up playing out. By the time we got to Uncanny X-Men, where Cyclops had even come back, I remember distinctly just feeling that the comics were just not an enjoyable thing anymore. There was like a panel where there was this anti-mutant rally or something that was happening, and Hawkeye and Black Widow show up next to Logan, and they're like, look, we don't cause a scene here, right?
Yeah.
And we can't afford to be seen. You had this feeling that like, is this what the Avengers really stand for? And is this what we consider to be an enjoyable experience reading X-Men books? And of course, characters were dying left or right. It seemed like we knew that it wasn't going to matter because something big was on the horizon. But even when we got there, I was so tired that I didn't expect anything from the Hickman era. And to shift from all of that garbage, I loop it all in with like the Remender era of mutant is an M word, right? And just all of that, right? Not really understanding the X-Men as these stand-ins for marginalized communities. And to really see that embraced in the Hickman era was so refreshing.
I'd stopped reading at Marvel Now, somewhere in that era. And when I heard the Hickman reboot for Hoxpox being announced, that's when I decided, I'll pick this up again and just take this reboot for what it is at face value. And I don't regret not going through the disappointment that you two did and being able to enter this new era with hope.
And I wonder if it speaks more to us as queer people and other communities who read who are also share other marginalized identities, because it feels like you're being seen. Of course, marginalized communities are not monolithic, but to me, as both a person of color and a queer person, these are things that I want to see in terms of liberational stories, right? I don't want to see marginalized people constantly being downtrodden, killed, right? Fighting against insurmountable odds. at some point, I want to see them triumph, especially in the queer community. It's been great to see queerness celebrated, embraced to the extent that it has in mainstream media, and I know that these things are within bubbles, right? Not everyone feels that way throughout the country or the world, but it can kind of feel like we're in this moment where queerness and gender nonconformity are being represented and seen and celebrated. And I feel like that's reflected in the Hickman era here.
I agree. Again, it goes back to that line, which has really been more poignant than I ever expected, that you said, which is like, these books aren't written for me. And I feel almost like the books in the Krakoa era have been written for me. And that is so nice. And it feels good. And it's why we made this podcast. It's why we like to talk about this stuff every week and even throughout the week. It's enjoyable to read about the X-Men again. And that is nice to have.
You guys know that one of my favorite eras of the X-Men, and specifically my favorite incarnations of Cyclops, is when he decides to form Utopia and becomes more, the way I describe him, as a freedom fighter. And I think it was a really controversial time because, one, a lot of people don't like Scott Summers, right? But I enjoyed seeing him move from kind of a placating idealist to someone who is a radical, who's willing to reject compliance and respectability politics in order to fight for his community and not try to make nice, not try to be a pleasant person or a pleasant mutant face for the Avengers, to actually just fight for what's important, which is mutant survival. And I think that was really not well received by a lot of other populations. Even within queer communities, there are people who hated it. But especially I felt among readership that was largely straight, cisgender male, didn't like it at all. There were lots of discussions that Cyclops was being too violent, right? And too disruptive. And I wanted to see that because I was tired of seeing mutants being killed and abused and whatever, and nothing coming of it. That the politics of being a respectable and pleasant minority had failed. And even though I love that era, I probably love just seeing the celebratory era even more. Also, just being in the space where you're not even fighting that radical battle anymore. You're just living and thriving is so valuable.
Pride has a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's why this entire era, based on historical precedent, has me extremely nervous. Because we've seen Magneto pushing norms. He's been unapologetic in his mutantdom since day one. And look how that ended. So I am always just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want this to be a persistent thing, but I just know that they're going to shake this era up, as soon as Jonathan Hickman's run is done. And we'll be back to doom and gloom, tragedy, and misery for the X-Men and all mutants again.
Right. I hope not, but I share that fear. And let's not forget, when it comes to Magneto, before Krakoa, there was Genosha, but before Genosha, there was Asteroid M. The guy cannot keep a city-state even afloat. Literally. Yeah, we don't want to leave Magneto in charge of keeping any kind of populace around.
So why did we put him in the government?
We're already seeing him try to undermine the rules of Krakoa that are keeping everything together. He wants to revive Fabian Cortez, and then he wants to revisit how the Quiet Council handles the issue of killing humans. That to me rings a lot of alarms because I feel like this is the beginning of the undoing of everything that's happening in Krakoa.
Because let's admit, there are a ton of seeds that have been planted for the fall of Krakoa. We've got, just in the names, we've got Dawn of X, now we're in Reign of X. You know damn well there's going to be a Fall of X.
A king has his reign, and then he dies. It's inevitable.
If we were to lose the nation as a whole, maybe it would just splinter into multiple mutant nations. And that would be a fair compromise, I guess.
So let's say it now for the podcast. Eventually, one day, we will look back, assuming this podcast still exists, on that day where the Hickman era has signaled its end, and we will stand there in trepidation of what lays before us.
Yeah. I say that we all have glasses of mimosas on that day, and we stare at Destiny's floating mask, and we toast to her because she saw it coming. So we have our tops, we have our bottoms. Thank you all so much for listening. And if you would like to join in the conversation, please comment below in the YouTube comments. Beyond that, please send us an email to goodmorningkrakoa@gmail.com. That is a great place to contact us. Right now, my inbox is so dusty. She's got mobs in her. Love her.
That's not
Give
the
her
only
loving.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
Well,
as always, like and subscribe.
like, comment, and subscribe. Send us emails. Give us all your loving, all your hugs and kisses too. And with that said, good morning, Krakoa, and good night.